Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome. My name is Adelina and I make videos about living in my tiny house on wheels and living a more intentional life. I celebrated my 2-year anniversary in the tiny house this past July. Today I just wanted to go over 5 things that have been challenges in these last 2 years in the tiny house, and then things that have worked really well for the last 2 years. Living in a tiny house can be a challenge because you're in a very small space. I thought I would just sort of summarize 5 things that have been a challenge that I've had to deal with living in the tiny house, and then 6 of the things that are working really well. And then next Sunday I'll finish up that list because I think it's too long for one video. So let's get started with 5 things that have been a bit of a challenge these last 2 years living in my tiny house on wheels. Just to recap, my house was delivered on July 8th, 2019. I had it blocked up and was able to live in it a couple of days later. So I have been living in here for 2 years at beginning of July. So I'd say that the number one challenge that I've had both winters that I've been in the tiny house is one frozen pipe. The first year it was because I had somehow tripped the breaker for the outside circuit and the heat tape wasn't functioning properly, and we were going through some extremely cold temperatures. But this year, this past winter, it was simply, we got down to minus 32, minus 33. I'm not sure what that is in Fahrenheit. I'll maybe put it up on the screen, but it got really cold both winters. But this year, it wasn't that I blew a breaker. The heat tape was working fine. None of the other pipes froze except for the little water line that comes up behind the toilet that is used to fill the tank to flush the toilet. The heat tape doesn't come all the way up on that little pipe or that little hose, and it's a flexible PVC, I guess. So it did freeze. It's my fault. I guess I thought that at minus 25 it would be fine, but it wasn't. So from that point forward, whenever it got down below minus 20, especially at night, I started leaving the tap running in the bathroom, but also I just sort of MacGyvered a way to get the tank to continually fill. What I did was basically just tie a string that went down in underneath the seal, and it kept it from sealing tightly so that it would sort of kick in and run every once in a while, and that prevented it from freezing. I never had any problems with any of the other pipes. So that was my one issue, and both winters I've had an issue with a pipe freezing. Nothing super serious, nothing burst or anything like that. So that's number one on the things that were a bit of a challenge in the last 2 years in my tiny house. In keeping with that theme of extreme temperatures, this summer we have had some really hot days. The first summer I was here and last summer, not so bad. There were some hot days, but nothing like it's been this summer already. So we had some really hot days. It was 36, 37 degrees outside. I know that there are some parts of North America and around the world that have experienced even hotter than that, but that was pretty hot in the tiny house. I have spray foam insulation, but it was still so hot in here because there's no trees shading the house, and there are a lot of windows. So even with keeping the blinds closed, even with closing the windows, once it got to a certain temperature, it wasn't enough. It was 33 degrees Celsius inside the house for almost a week, which was really hot. So yeah, not good for me, not good for Sophie, the kitty cat. So I ended up ordering a freestanding air conditioner, and it is now up in the loft, and it works really well. Ironically, we haven't had anything quite as hot since then, but it's been pretty warm. We've got to 30 degrees, and having that air conditioner on and the ceiling fan on has really made a big difference. I didn't think that I needed to put in a sort of built-in air conditioning in the tiny house. It just never occurred to me, given the climate that I'm in, that I would need it, because so few houses in Calgary here actually have air conditioning built in. Maybe more now, but historically. And certainly I've never lived in a house in Calgary that had air conditioning in it. So extreme heat was the second challenge that I've had in the tiny house. I recently did a video on my Lunas air exchange system and the issue that I was having with it. And that is number 3 of the things that I've had to deal with that were sort of a bit of a hassle, things that I had to fix in the tiny house. And it was the unit that was in the bedroom. And it was the fan, for some reason, had started making a fairly loud to me sound when it would switch from pulling air in to pushing air out, or vice versa. I'm not sure which direction. And it was enough to actually bother me when I was sleeping. And that's a problem because it's right over my bed. So I ended up having to get another unit shipped to me, and it was a very easy fix, very easy install. But I'm glad that I was able to do that, because it's got a 2-year warranty, and I was just over that period. But the company, Lunos, was amazing, and their representative, Alec, was incredible. And so I was able to get that shipped to me and do the exchange of the old one for the new one, and it's working perfectly now. It's very quiet. I can still hear it. I always hear the bit of a hum, especially when it switches from pulling to pushing, but nothing that would keep me awake, nothing like it was before. It's just making the normal sounds. So that was the third thing that I had to deal with, sort of fix in the tiny house in these last 2 years. I did have an issue with my fridge. And it was actually last winter that I had the problem. So I have a Maytag fridge that I bought, that we ordered from the Brick through the builder. And I love this fridge, actually. It's the perfect size for the tiny house. It's got a nice big freezer with drawers, which is really hard to find in a small fridge. And it's perfect for me. However, it was the alarm on it kept going off, and it would always go off in the middle of the night. Never during the day, always in the middle of the night. And it was just this little beep, 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 beep. And I couldn't figure out what the problem is. I could see the little icon, and I looked in the manual, and it told me how to reset it to get it to turn off, which I could do, and it would be fine for a day or two, maybe a week, and then it would happen again. And oh my God, was that frustrating. So I ended up calling Maytag, and they sent a technician out to look at the fridge. And what I learned about this fridge was very interesting. The fact is that that's a problem that happens with that model all the time. In fact, the model is no longer available. It's been discontinued. I don't know why. Maybe that was one of the reasons. So he couldn't fix it. There was nothing he could do except actually take the speaker out. One of the alarms, one of the sensors goes off. It no longer alarms. And that's what he said. I can do that, but obviously there's no warranty for that. And I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, but if you accidentally leave the fridge door open, you won't have an alarm that tells you. I'm like, I will take that chance. I would rather sleep through the night and no longer have that issue, and I will take that chance. So that's what he did. And ironically, the little flashing icon has been on ever since. Nothing bad has ever happened. He looked at it. Everything is working perfectly. It was then. It still is now. There's nothing wrong with the fridge. It's just, it's one of these issues that this model has. That was so annoying. I lived with that for probably far longer than I should. That was one of the things that I had to deal with in the 2 years that I've lived here, but not a big deal. Again, none of these have been big deals, just things that happen in any house, just happen to happen in my tiny house. So number 5 is kind of odd, and something that I just noticed when I was installing the air conditioner in the tiny house up in the loft. And that is that I have a crack in the corner of one of my windows, the window that is the awning one. As I'm sitting here, the one on my right. There's a little crack on one side. I don't know when it happened. I didn't notice it last summer when I had that window open. I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but there's a crack. I'm trying to get a good angle of it. There you go. And it's on the inside pane of the window, which is random. At first I thought it was on the outside, but it's obviously on the inside pane, and I have no idea how that happened. I mean, the screen is fine, and the rest of the window is fine. It's very bizarre, but that's definitely one of those things that I will have to fix at some point, but it doesn't affect the operation of the window, and you can't see it from the outside, so it doesn't look horrible. It's not going to be a big priority until I move the tiny house next year, next summer, next spring, but that's definitely one of those things that's on the list of things I have to fix, things that have happened in the 2 years that I've lived in the tiny house. All right, that's enough bad news. Let's talk about 6 things that have worked incredibly well, that I absolutely love about the tiny house in the 2 years that I've lived here. I'll start with number 1, the built-in desk office space. That has worked beautifully, especially given the situation we've been in since, well, for a year and a half now almost, with having to work, so many of us having to work from home. I am now a full-time teleworker, so I'll always be working from home. And I am so grateful that I built in that dedicated office space so that I have a workspace that's can always be set up during the week. I have a place for my printer, I have a place for my files. It really works well for me, and it's out of the way. It's not in the living space, the other living space. So I have to say that number 1 on that list of things that have been perfect is the desk space in the tiny house. Sort of to go along with that, I would have to say the loft space has been also amazing in the tiny house. Now, I don't actually use the loft space for very, very many things. It's got the air conditioner in there now, and it's basically empty. But having that loft space has been great, because when I became a full-time teleworker, they sent me a shredder. I now get paper and ink for my printer, supplies, things like that. And I have a place to store them inside. I just put everything up in the loft, tuck it back a bit so it's not visible. And that shredder is fair size and it's heavy. So if I didn't have that loft, I would have to find a place for it on the main floor, and that would be very inconvenient. So I got to say, I'm really grateful that I decided to put a loft in, even though I wasn't going to have my bedroom in the loft and I didn't need it for something specific at the time. It has come in really handy. So yeah, definitely number 2 is the loft in the tiny house. I don't think number 3 is going to surprise a whole lot of you. Number 3 is my kitchen. I love my kitchen. It is just so functional. The work triangle is amazing. It has so much counter space for food prep. I'm able to film recipes in it. The storage is incredible, even though I don't have upper cabinets, other than I have that shelf with the plate rack that my microwave is on, and I have a few jars up there. Otherwise, I have no uppers. Everything, all my utensils, pots, appliances, things like that are stored in the lower cabinets. So much space for everything. I don't actually have any food in the lower cabinets. The food is in the pantry, which is another thing that I love about that kitchen, that I have an actual food pantry. The stove is smaller than a standard size stove. It's a little narrower. It's more of an apartment size, but I have had 0 problems cooking on it. There's 4 burners, no issues. The oven works really well, and I'm able to fit my casserole dishes in there and bake bread and things like that. So yeah, the kitchen is definitely number 3 on the things that I love about this tiny house, and it's been working super well for me. Number 5 is going to be the bedroom closet. All the storage in the tiny house, but the bedroom closet in particular. It's awesome. I'm able to store my out-of-season clothes at the back of it. I know that some of you are concerned about the fact that it's sort of what I call my crawling closet because the floor is up a bit, but everything that I wear on a daily basis, I can reach by just leaning in. I don't actually have to crawl into my closet every day to get my clothes. I have my drawer unit on the right side, and then the hanging rod is all on the left side. It's big, it stores a ton, it's out of the way. And I love that the bifold doors are mirrored. So I've got to say that the bedroom closet is awesome and bigger than I've seen in almost every tiny house that I have looked at. Number 6 is the windows. I have a lot of windows in my tiny house, most of them open, and it allows me to have this amazing cross breeze in here. It also makes the tiny house feel so much bigger and open. I never feel claustrophobic in here, even in the middle of winter when it's too cold to go outside, and I actually don't leave the house for days at a time because it's just too cold to even go for a walk. I never feel claustrophobic in here. On your regular, like today, summer days when it was 25 degrees Celsius, I think it got up to 27 degrees Celsius, all I needed to do was open up all the windows and get this amazing cross breeze. I have big windows in my bedroom. It has been working really well in the tiny house. I just wanted to share those 2 lists with you. There's more to the list of things that has been working really well, but yeah, 2 years has flown by, and the house has felt like a sanctuary the whole time. I'm really, really happy here, and I've got to say that none of those 5 things have been a big deal at all. It would be the same sort of thing that you deal with in your foundation built house. You know, things break, things need fixing, pipes freeze, and temperatures soar, especially nowadays. And we just deal with it. In the tiny house, it's no different. I hope you enjoyed the video. Only 50% of my viewers are subscribers, and it would be awesome if you would subscribe. It doesn't cost anything, and it really helps the channel grow, which is awesome. And it means that you can be part of the family, which is awesome as well. I hope you guys are doing well and staying safe, and I will talk to you next Sunday.